Good evening and welcome to yet another edition of the program Times Exclusive here on Times Network. My name is Brian Banda. Glad you could join us. In this edition of the program, I'll be talking to Mr. Benedicto Kondowe. He's the Executive Director of Civil Society Education Coalition.
Weather Shield, another brand from Rainbow Paints. This is Ultimate. An extreme high-performance acrylic smooth textured finishing with ultraviolet absorption and maximum flexibility properties for wall finishes. A built-in fungicide to resist molds. Simple to use, quick drying, water-resistant binding power, low dirt retention, and hides hairline cracks. Suitable for use on all exterior walls, be it plaster, concrete, or brickwork. Available in a wide range of colors in 5 and 20-liter containers. Contact us today in Blantyre 01841-813, 01841-871, Lilongwe 01755-901. Email info@rainbowpaints.biz. Rainbow Paints, peace of mind, part of the deal.
Tikutero kuti tikulandireni program inanso sabata ino ya Times Exclusive. Ndine Brian Banda. Mprogramu yathu iyi tikhala tikulankhula ndi Bambo Benedicto Kondowe amene amatsogolera bungwe la Civil Society Education Coalition. Bambo Kondowe ali very passionate pa nkhani ya maphunziro mdziko muno. Ndipo makhala mukuwaona pakaneba yathu iyi maprogramu athu osiyanasiyana. Pamene chakachi chikupita kumapeto, tikufuna tiunike kuti kodi chaka chino zayenda bwanji pa nkhani za maphunziro. Ndi mulendo wanga mprogramu imeneyi. Mr. Kondowe, thank you very much for joining us. We'll be mixing Chichewa and the English at your pleasure.
No problem.
As we come towards the end of the year 2018, do you think we are making significant strides in as far as education is concerned?
This is a very important question, Brian. And let me start by saying that as a country, we have made some progress with regard to access to education, especially if you look at two levels, and these are primary as well as secondary. Where we haven't made much progress in respect of access is to do with tertiary education. Because every year, in terms of number of eligible students for higher education, falls within the range of 15,000 plus. But in terms of actual access, you are talking about not more than 4,000, meaning that less than 30% have access to tertiary education. So this has been a very problematic issue. But in general, standards have declined tremendously from what used to be a very vibrant education system during Kamuzu Banda regime. I think over the year, we seem to have lost direction as a country in that we have promoted access at the expense of quality. My own view is that access on its own is not enough if you cannot guarantee quality education in a country. But also when you are talking about the right to education as a fundamental human right, you are not just talking about any other education. You are talking about affordability, you are talking about accessibility, you are talking about quality, you are talking about relevance. So if you are to promote quality, if you are to promote the right to education, we are essentially talking about the right to quality education. And that's why, as an organization, we are always concerned with some of these issues. The other setback has been to do with the welfare and management of teachers. I think for some time now, we have failed to look after teachers in a manner that would empower them to commit their services to Malawian children who are craving to learn. And so over time, there have been issues to do with promotion, teachers not being promoted, some working in excess of 20 years without being promoted. You talk about payment of salary arrears. It has been a big issue. As of last year, salary arrears were in excess of 1.2 billion. Of course, government has made some steps in terms of clearing, but not all salary arrears have been dealt with. Now we are talking about recruitment and promotion of upgraded teachers. It is still an issue. So that too has been problematic. Now you talk about the role of the rollout of the new curriculum in secondary schools, which is promoting science subjects. The state of preparedness is still questionable. You are talking about a curriculum which is promoting sciences, yet most of the schools do not even have laboratories. In Malawi here, 2/3 of the schools are community-based secondary schools. Now, you look at the status of community-based secondary schools. Almost all of them do not have laboratories. Now, what kind of science-oriented curriculum will be implemented in these schools? This is also something that perhaps the current government could have looked well ahead of the reform. But it seems it is something that the current government is not doing. So, in totality of all these factors, I would, without any doubt, say that our education system is almost at the verge of collapse. Unless there is strategic thinking, unless there is strategic leadership, the status of education in this country will be a complete mess.
Where is the problem? Is it at ministry level? Is it at district level? Where are we getting it wrong, and what can we do?
Any robust education system is driven by the policy agenda of government of the day. Where we are messing up is that there are political decisions which take center stage.
Like what?
Not long time ago, you saw government proceeding to abolish secondary school tuition without thorough assessment of the implication. I'm mindful of the fact that we are a part of the global network, which is currently promoting expansion of free education to secondary under Sustainable Development Goal number 4. But this goal is not cast in stone. It requires member states to plan around it. And that's why, as an organization, our position has been, let us plan around it before we can announce the actual abolition of fee at secondary level. But government proceeded without even looking at the assessment. Now, when you talk about subvention to secondary school, it is already on the lower side. Now, if you take out the small fees, which in total, based on our own analysis, cumulatively the figures are coming around 400 million. That meant something to these schools. So this is a classical example of decision which has not been well thought through.
You want to tell us that people like you, who are very passionate about education in this country, you didn't know about this?
We didn't know. In fact, on a number of occasions after we held rumors, we kept on asking government about it. And they kept on telling us to say, it has nothing to do with that. In fact, when we queried as to why they suspended, they said the intention of government was not to take out the fees, but rather to put in place a system that will ensure that the little amount of money that schools are collecting are used for intended purpose. Yet behind the curtains, government had already made their decision. And that's why you were saying on major policies, it is important that government consults the stakeholders widely so that they can put forward suggestions, some of which may be helpful in terms of turning around the status of education in this country.
Are you therefore convinced with the reasons why they have done away with tuition fees?
Any decision without a fallback position is not worth a while. And that's why you were saying there might have been need because we are a part of the global community which is currently promoting expansion of free education to secondary education, which we need to subscribe to. But we needed, first of all, to prepare, to lay the ground so that by the time that we roll out this reform, we have done the preparation, we have mitigated the negative consequences which would arise by lack of planning around it.
What are they doing about it? What are they saying is the reason behind it?
Okay, I will give you this scenario. Their own assessment reveals that we have in excess of 800 million towards protection program. And these are resources which cater for bursaries, among others. Now, in the absence of a fallback position that I'm talking about, it means that government will be taking out from this program, which is already committed to meet needy students. So if you take out 400 million, which is a cumulative support towards the fees which have been taken out, it means that you are also reducing number of needy students who are currently accessing their education through the bursary scheme or social protection scheme. And it means that you are not essentially addressing the problem as it is. You are simply apportioning the problem. You are simply shifting the problem from those who were benefiting under the bursary scheme to those who were being serviced by the small fees that students were paying under the current arrangement. So this in itself, in as far as I'm concerned, we are not helping the education sector. We are simply just trying to play around, to push around the problem from one position to the other. And I'm saying, a good policy maker is the one who looks at issues strategically. We should not have affected the social protection, because currently you will note that this decision was made at a time that budget was already appropriated in Parliament, meaning that there is no provision to support the abolition as the 2018-2019 budget is concerned.
So where are they going to get the money?
I don't even know. Even for them, when we queried, they were of the view that perhaps this is an aspect they'll be pushing during the midterm budget review.
Yeah, but what do you think necessitated this move? Is it political? Is it a question of votes? As people are saying, you know these things better than probably I do.
So many people have speculated that we are in times where votes matter, and 2019 is not far away. You will note that the DPP manifesto spoke highly about education, and one of the things was to reposition secondary school education. And they might have realized that they've not done much in as far as transforming the education sector is concerned. So in terms of leaving their manifesto, they realize that they are far behind. And perhaps this is a way to make up the time that has elapsed without doing much of the greater reforms which would appeal to the voters.
So it's political?
Somehow, yes. Very much so, because as I said, if the government was not willing to suspend pending thorough preparation, that would give an indication in terms of why in a haste.
Now, let's talk about the areas you talked about. Is government finding a solution to this issue?
For the time being, they have made some progress. They have created some of the areas significantly, but I believe that the major issue is in terms of handling this issue once and for all. So government needs to have a clear solution to the issue of arrears, because you note that more teachers are being recruited into the system. So if we do not have a system that ensures that once teachers are recruited, they are absorbed on the payroll, essentially you cannot do away with the issue of arrears, because cumulatively arrears will be accumulated, because it takes a bit of time for teachers to be absorbed on the payroll. And this is something that we need to deal with. Now that, for instance, primary school teachers are handled at local government level, or secondary school teachers are handled at Capitol Hill, you need to have a very strong system even at local council level to make sure that the paperwork is done on time, and that if there is a delay, it should not go beyond 1 month, a maximum of 2 months. And if that is the direction that government will take, then essentially we can do away with teacher arrears. If that is not done, teacher arrears will be sung year after year.
Do you think, how can you describe the morale of teachers as we speak today?
Teachers are a very frustrated force in this country.
Frustrated force?
Very frustrated force for a number of reasons. As I've said, some have worked in excess of 10 years, some 20 years without being promoted, meaning that they are still at the entry grade. I have spoken to some teachers who have essentially retired at the same grade since they joined teaching service. Some of the teachers have upgraded themselves, they can't be promoted, meaning that they are receiving salary that is not worth the grade that they have. Some have actually secured diplomas, some even degrees, but their salary is that of a certificate level teacher. And that speaks volume about the kind of working force that we're talking about. You talk about teacher houses. You go to rural areas, you'll be shocked to see a teacher, a house where a teacher operates from. Grass-thatched houses, which during rainy season reeks. And I think this is a very pathetic situation that teachers find themselves in. Yet, they are a very important human capital in as far as production of quality human capital that is needed to drive the education agenda, the development agenda in this country is concerned. So I think we need to do a bit more to uplift the welfare of teachers in this country.
Every year we are passing billions in the Ministry of Education through the budget. Where is this money going? If until today, students are still learning under the tree, teachers are still living in grass-thatched houses, where are we getting wrong? Where is the money going? Are you following the money, you yourself as your organization?
Yes, very much so. I would say that the demand in the education sector does not equal what we are currently providing. If you talk about the 2018-2019 budget, education was provided 17.9% of the total national budget. And that is beyond even the benchmark of not less than 20%. As for the last global education agenda, currently we're talking about between 15 to 20%. Of the total education budget, about 70% is spent on salaries. About 70%. About 70% is spent on salaries. You may also wish to note that of the total civil servants that we have in this country, of the total civil servants, more than 1/3 are teachers. So they actually form the biggest human capital within the government setup. So you would say that yes, in terms of figures, they are on the higher side, but that does not equal the demand. Now, it means that you are remaining with less than 20%, which needs to go into what is called other recurrent costs, or RT, or other current transactions. And these transactions will relate to, you talk about teaching and learning materials, among others. So in terms of actual service, we are not providing much because most of the salaries are spent on, most of the sources are spent on salary. So that is where perhaps we need to do a fair balancing act, but more so allocating more resources so that we do not compromise on the services.
So we can do better.
We can do better.
Let's talk about the policies that this administration is.
Can I suggest some of the areas where perhaps we can put out resources?
Yes, please. Go ahead.
These are political programs which quite often are not heavily scrutinized. So you talk about fertilizer subsidy program. When you look at the outputs, the outturn from this, and I think there have been so many reports in terms of whether these resources are used for intended purpose. I think there is high corruption around fertilizer subsidy program, which puts question whether these are programs worth a while. I think we can reduce from fertilizer subsidy program
and put that money into education.
Into education or health sector, because health sector is as equally affected as education. You talk about the iron sheet cement subsidy.
The subsidy, yeah.
This is also a program which is politically driven, yet politicians will have no interest to make any cuts to do with the iron sheet cement subsidy. These are programs where we can do some cuttings. You talk about 5 billion for tree planting. Until now, I was hearing on the radio that in a number of districts, they haven't started that this program. And districts like Chikwawa, they've been querying that resources have not even been provided to the local councils. Yet rains have started. But these are political programs, so to speak. Yeah.
So maybe we can take away some of the money and put that
A little something, yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
You think that would make a difference?
That would make a difference, even supporting needy students within our university.
We'll talk about needy students in a moment.
Yeah.
We'll take a short break with you and we'll be back in a moment. In case you're just joining us, this is Times exclusive, airing on Times Television. My name is Brian Banda. In this edition of the program, I'm talking to Mr. Benedicto Kondowe. He's the chief executive of Civil Society Coalition. Civil Society Coalition on Education.
Yes.
We'll take a short break. We'll be back in a moment.
Weather Shield, another brand from Rainbow Paints. This is Ultimate. An extreme high-performance acrylic smooth textured finishing with ultraviolet absorption and maximum flexibility properties for wall finishes. A built-in fungicide to resist molds. Simple to use, quick drying, water-resistant binding power, low dirt retention, and hides hairline cracks. Suitable for use on all exterior walls, be it plaster, concrete, or brickwork. Available in a wide range of colors in 5 and 20-liter containers. Contact us today in Blantyre 01841-813, 01841-871, Lilongwe 01755-901. Email info@rainbowpaints.biz. Rainbow Paints. Peace of mind, part of the deal.
You're watching this week's edition of the program Times Exclusive on Times Television. My name is Brian Banda. If you're just joining us, we are talking to Benedicto Kondowe, who is the Executive Director for Civil Society Coalition on Education. Welcome back to the other half of the program.
Thank you very much, Brian.
So you before we went for a commercial break, you were saying, why can't we take a little bit of FISP money and put it into education or health?
Yes.
So this money, according to your observation, is not making an impact on Malawians?
The impact is quite minimal, because you note that for the last 8 years or so, we have been implementing FISP program, but we have not actually graduated from hunger. This is a situation that we have to deal with year in, year out, for a number of reasons. The first, you note that the targeting of FISP leaves a lot to be desired, because part of the target are the aged, who might not even have the capacity to grow, to put the fertilizer that they receive, fertilizer and input, into proper use. So the question then becomes, are you appropriately targeting so that you can produce for purposes of for purposes of being food sufficient? So that is one issue. The second issue is the whole question around timing. At what point are the beneficiaries receiving fertilizer and other inputs? You'll note that the people who receive coupon, when they go to the points where they need to get these inputs, they are usually not available. So which means that we are not utilizing the facility that we have. Other people have argued that is there a way in which we can actually strike a balance within the FISP program, such that half could be put to commercial use, where you give to the commercial sector to maximize production and have extra harvest accessed by government. And in that way, you can even sell at a lower price. This is another option. But again, when you read the reports around FISP, they always provide or state that a significant amount of resources are used through fraud and corruption at different levels. So if you put together these factors, the conclusion is very simple, that as a country, we have failed to utilize FISP program in a manner that would add value to the facility. So it is based on these realities that I'm of the strong view that we shouldn't consistently put more resources into the FISP. If you look at the 2018-2019 budget, we have in excess of 50 billion. For what? When these resources are not effectively utilized. So perhaps we can dedicate part of the resources to sectors which are currently underfunded, such as health and education.
Like needed students, for example. You talked about needed students.
Precisely.
Why are we having this problem today? In the press, the Daily Times this week talked about a number of students that are at the verge of being fired from the university because they haven't paid fees. 300. These are quite huge numbers. Where are we getting it wrong?
They are huge numbers because if you look at the subvention which goes to the Higher Education Loans and Grants Board, the funds haven't been adequate. For last year, government provided around 4 billion to cater for the needed students. In terms of number of needed students, if you look at the reports by the Loans Board, it clearly states that every year they receive not less than 15,000 applications. Of the 15,000 applications after the vetting and assessment, not less than 10,000 are eligible, meaning that these are entitled to receive loans. But what they have been providing is around 4,700 something, meaning that almost half of the eligible students are left out because the basket is still so small. So we have been engaging government on the possibility of increasing. This time around, because the numbers have also increased, we're talking around 20,000 now, government has at least increased by 100%, because now the subvention to the Loans Board has been at the level of 8 billion. So we expect the Loans Board to now make available more loans than they were. But this will not be at the level that everyone else, every needed student should be able to access. One other element that hasn't been addressed has always been those students who are pursuing diploma. Because these are Moravians as well. These are students who are falling within higher education institutions. Because the current provision is limited to degree. Now, are we saying that these are the only legitimate students that we have in this country? How many of the poor Moravians are accessing education at the level of diploma? This is an issue that as an organization we are seriously engaging with the National Council for Higher Education as well as Loans Board. As we are talking now, a position paper has been made around access of loans by diploma students, because these are equally needed students. I think if we are to promote equitable access, then we should also reserve something.
So we have only been targeting degree students.
Precisely. Precisely.
And you think it is not right?
It is not right. It is not right, because we should not assume that the only relevant qualification or program that a student can do in all the public universities that we have is at degree level. I think we are not fair, because some, their only hope, their only opportunity is to do a diploma program. So as long as the diploma program is one that is accredited by government, then they should be able to benefit something. So perhaps we can do a split of the same cake. We can do a split, a certain proportion catering for students who are enrolled in diploma, and a certain proportion catering for degree students who are enrolled in degree programs.
Let's talk about one of the controversial issues of our time in as far as education is concerned, the quota. It keeps on coming, then it falters, then it comes back again. And with the elections coming in 5 months' time, it's going to be a hot issue on the campaign trail. What's the views of civil society coalition on education in as far as this issue is concerned?
There is a historical background to this. Why this issue keeps on coming.
Because we have already been here.
It's because no study has been done to establish what gains or losses we have made as a country whilst implementing quota system. In 1992, when Kamuzu Banda abolished quota system, he gave instruction to University of Malawi to make resources available to Center for Education, Research and Training to undertake a study for a country to establish what gains or losses we have done. That study until now has never happened. That is the background to this issue. It is also a matter of public policy that when you have a policy that was once abolished, and should you opt to reintroduce that policy, it should be based on empirical evidence, which might perhaps suggest that that policy was better servicing the country. And in the absence of this study, where do you get the motivation to reintroduce a policy? You can't. So from a historical perspective, it is already problematic against the context that I've painted. Now, when you are talking about quota system, which currently is equitable selection policy. Equitable selection policy and quota system are one and the same. They are not different.
Okay.
We are talking about differences in semantics, differences in nomenclature.
Okay.
They are essentially the same. So it doesn't make any difference whether you talk about quota system or you talk about equitable selection policy. The aim of the policy is deemed to be equalizing opportunity. I totally agree. You need to make everyone, okay, being at equal footing to access. But where, as an organization, we actually fought the equitable selection policy is on an account of two major factors. The current arrangement, one of the criteria which is used is population size of the district. So you are saying that distribution will be made based on the population size. This population size must be understood firmly for our listeners. We are talking about crude population. For those who are familiar with the geography or demography, we are talking about a population which includes the aged and the newly born babies who have nothing to do with a higher education. Is this criteria reasonable? It is not reasonable. So perhaps we should have reviewed the criteria of population to talk about population of school-going age children, or even far much better, talking about population of children who are at secondary level.
So they're just including everyone?
Even the aged.
Okay.
So I don't know whether you are selecting the aged to go to university. I don't know whether you are selecting the newly born babies to go to university. So that in itself is problematic. Now, you talk about 10 guaranteed spaces to each and every district as the first step, because you give each district 10. Then the rest you select based on population size and the ability of the student to get 6 credits. So for the 10, if you now go to the district to say, who accesses the 10 slots? Our own assessment has established that in 28 districts that we have as of the last academic year, only 2 districts have had some spaces being taken up by students who go to community secondary schools. Meaning that all the 10 spaces are taken up by students who go to boarding secondary schools. Now, which quarter are you talking about? Because again, at the district level, we are leaving out children who are coming from poor households, whose only opportunity to access secondary education is by going to a community secondary school. So is this quarter safe thing? So for us, we are saying no. If we want this policy, then can we review it? So that perhaps when we are talking about 10 guaranteed spaces, we should be able to say, out of the 10 guaranteed spaces, we are leaving 4 slots or 5 slots to community secondary school. Then it will make sense.
So the community secondary schools have been left out in the
completed, because in terms of performance, you and I know very well that community secondary schools are not performing well for obvious reasons. And these factors are a government-created factor. So why should we penalize?
They are government.
Precisely, because government has obligation to provide quality education. So if community secondary schools are not performing, and if boarding secondary schools are performing better than community secondary school, we should be able to say, what is making boarding or conventional secondary school perform? Why can't we provide the same environment to community secondary school? So even when you are talking about quota, I'm saying quota for who? Because at a district level, we are simply saying let us give 10 slots to every district. We are not concerned how those slots are distributed. For me, I'm saying that is not meaningful quota. Meaningful quota should be the one which also takes care of the interests of students who are learning in community.
What about the examining of these students? Is it fair for a student who is at a boarding secondary school, he has access to electricity the whole day and at night, and a community day secondary school who is only going to school in the morning and probably knocks off at 2 or 3, then he goes back, he has no electricity and all these accesses that the conventional secondary schools are having? Do you think we are being fair? They're all writing the same exam.
It is not, but again, it's the issue to do with what next. Because MANEP is maintaining this because this is the only way they can assess. If they do multiple assessment, in terms of objectivity and reliability, it will be problematic because the scale might not be the same in terms of assessing. So MANEP is restricting itself to assess them using the same measure, which is not unfair for a number of reasons. As I said, community day centers are not teaching sciences, yet they're exempt sciences. Some have not even seen a test tube, yet in an exam, they have to deal with an experiment which involves use of test tube and other chemicals. So when you go to community day center, it's more about if you mix X and Y, this is what you get. They are not making it. These are making it and getting the answers. And that is the kind of education that you see in community day centers. Yet when it comes to assessment, you use the same measure. And when they fail, as a country, we are actually concerned that community day center schools are not performing. Yet the reasons are well-founded.
How best can we empower the community day secondary schools?
We need to mitigate the challenges that are currently prevailing in these community day secondary schools in terms of provision of quality teachers, qualified teachers, because now you still have community day secondary schools where some of the teachers are primary school teachers. So you have a primary school teachers teaching a fellow Form 4 student. Do you expect much from them? You talk about infrastructure, not conducive, no electricity, such that the students are not provided with a facility to start at night. You talk about teaching and learning materials, not available. Textbooks are quite insufficient in these community day secondary schools. And also the model, you talk about learners walking a distance of 20 kilometers. The issue of self-boarding, the facilities which are used are quite pathetic. All these contribute to the poor standards that we see in community day secondary schools. So we need to do a bit more than what we are currently doing. And that's why for us we commend the program that EU is supporting, which is currently seeks to upgrade community day secondary schools so that they are at the level of a boarding or conventional secondary school. But government must do more. And that's why perhaps the debate that we had earlier on, the discussion around are there areas where we can do cuts would come in. So that I think we uplift.
Concluding our issue on quota, you said there should be a 50% consideration on community day secondary schools. What else should be done to make sure that we have a win-win situation in as far as quota or whatever you're calling it is concerned?
My own view is that we may agree to say let each district have 10 slots. I think it's a good starting point. But when it comes to the remaining spaces, we are saying they should be based on population size and the ability of the student to get 6 points. Perhaps moving forward, that compromises the issue of quality. So we need to promote a fair balance. Let us have 10 slots to each district, and the remaining spaces should be awarded based on performance. If we do that, I think that would be a step towards resuscitating a vibrant education system.
Our friends from the north, they have always thought that this is an attack on them. Are they being realistic?
I would say it's the manner, the historical background that I painted earlier on, which is supporting this policy, which in a way seems as if it is targeting a certain section of the country. But you will agree with me that if these criteria are reviewed, there is a possibility that even people from the north might appreciate the essence. On one hand, I've said, we are using crude population, including the aged and newer born babies. Is that the right criteria? If you are talking about equity, should equity be at the expense of quality? So there is a way in which you can promote equity. As I've said, if you say every district must have 10 guaranteed spaces, that's a good starting point. But again, you cannot say the remaining spaces should be based on population size. Because again, quality must also be high regarded. And so for me, I'm saying these impressions are made because of the historical context and are made because of the criteria which is currently underway.
The 5-year mandate that we gave President Mutharika and his Democratic Progressive Party is coming to end in 5 months' time. How would you rate President Mutharika's commitment to education?
On paper, quite impressive, because we have thoroughly reviewed the DPP manifesto as of 2014. Quite impressive, and in fact, it was one of the political parties which had a robust agenda for education. In terms of implementation, quite problematic. I don't think after getting to government, DPP regularly went back to its own manifesto to see how they are faring. So I would say there are a lot of decisions which have been made which run against their own manifesto. You talk about abolition of tuition fee in secondary school. You talk about abolition of JCE. You talk about the ongoing strikes that we have had in the university, leading to distorted academic calendars. You talk about the plight of teachers in this country. All these have come under the current regime. They have been sustained under the current regime. When we thought that when they were getting government, they knew the challenges that their predecessors had faced. And perhaps we expected a new lease of relief, which hasn't been the case. So I would say that on paper, yes, the manifesto was very impressive. Politically, in terms of political rhetoric, strong messages were sent. But in terms of delivery, it has been problematic, and we would still insist that while remaining with 6 months, is there anything that they can do to turn around things? Not achieving.
Do you think they can turn around?
They can. We have the midterm budget review here. We are talking about issues of finances. Is there a way in which the DPP government can show strong leadership by addressing some of the issues which can be addressed in the short term, not in the long term? So for me, I'm saying that there's still a window of opportunity. We are talking about teachers' salaries, teachers needed to be recruited. All these would need resources. So is there anything that they can do during the midterm budget review to mitigate some of the short-term challenges that we have in the education sector?
Your final thoughts tonight. What message do you have to Malawians that are watching us tonight in as far as education, which is the field that you are in, is concerned?
The only hope for this country is to have a vibrant education system. Vision 2020 is very clear. Malawi Growth and Development Strategy 3 is very clear. In fact, Malawi Growth and Development Strategy 3 recognizes that education is a catalyst for socio-economic development. The vision of Malawi Growth and Development Strategy 3 is to transform this country into a literate nation. How do you transform this country into a literate nation? It is only through education. If you have a vibrant education system, you have a better future for generations to come. And the only good input, the only good thing that any meaningful government can do in a country is by ensuring that they have a vibrant education system. If you have a vibrant education system, it provides the impetus to transform other sectors. So education is an all-servicing sector. If indicators in the education sector are good, they have the potential to transform the indicators in the health sector. They have the potential to transform the indicators in the agriculture sector. So we'll do justice if we can guard against any efforts to further dwindle the education standards.
Mr. Kondowe, quite intriguing hearing you talk tonight. We wish we had more time, but thank you.
Thank
for
you very
your
much,
insights and your contributions in as far as education is concerned. And thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you for granting me the opportunity to be on your program.
Well, that's how we conclude this week's edition of the program Times Exclusive here on Times Television. In this edition, I've been talking to Mr. Benedicto Kondowe, Executive Director for Civil Society Coalition on Education. My name is Brian Banda. Until next week, it's goodbye.